How's it going, everyone? So today the market did pretty well, especially with high beta stocks. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different quantum and non-quantum stocks that did well, including Ondas, D-Wave, Poet Technologies, and a bunch of other stocks, including Veritone. We're going to look at a few watch lists. We're going to read through some news articles, and then I'm going to go over a bunch of charts as well. And we're going to do this in like 20 minutes or less is my goal. We got a lot to dig into. So if you haven't already, please consider giving this video a like. It helps more people see content like this. And let's jump right into it. So we can see that the market today was really good for high beta stocks. And these are the stocks that have been hit the hardest, 50, 55% drawdowns since their September, October highs. We saw D-Wave was up today 11% on some news that we'll go into related to government operations. And QUBT had a good day. Rigetti also. This was probably one of the nicer days of price action for quantum stocks for quite some time. BTQ was up almost 9%. CLSQ had a nice day. And then some of the large cap had some sell-off. So actually, let's take a quick look at the heat map. And we can see that there's still mixed selling and mixed sentiment through the market, with some big names selling off and some others very green. Let's look at also this other watch list. So we saw that Poet Technologies was up 28% today. D-Wave, Ondas, we're going to talk about Ondas today a little bit. They secured a new contract, and Archer Aviation is coming back from the gulag, from the dead, and even Red Cat, and just a lot of buying in these high beta names that I'm a long-term investor in. So it's always interesting to see how the price moves. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Fed rate cut decision, because these high beta, high risk stocks tend to do better if money is cheaper. And we got some weak job numbers today. So this is further cementing the idea or the prediction that this December we will get another rate cut. So the market is pricing that into some of these riskier assets. The fear and greed index is still just right there on the border between fear and extreme fear. And back in April and March, I was personally afraid, just because there were so many uncertainties with the tariffs and just like back and forth posturing between world superpowers in China and the United States. But I'm not afraid right now. And I don't know what people are afraid about. And this feels like it's gone on for quite some time. We've heard about these AI bubble fears, while Nvidia puts out quarterly after quarterly that just smashes expectations. And we see all or most of the Mag 7 doing very well in earnings. So tech is in a good place. We're in a rate cut cycle. The government is reopened. I just don't see a whole lot of reason to be negative, which is why I'm fairly bullish in the near term. We have had a pretty rough October and November, a lot of sell-off, a lot of fear. I'm optimistic that we're going to see a shift in the market. Typically in December, we get seasonal strength as well. So hopefully we'll see that. A lot of fund managers are underperforming for the year, so maybe they just are going to want to pump some liquidity into the market. We will see. So let's take a look at some news that's driving the markets, and then we're going to go into the stocks. And we're going to cover a whole bunch of different stocks today, so hope you are ready. Not a bubble, but maybe an air pocket. Wall Street says it's time to reset the AI narrative. Two of Wall Street's biggest firms say the AI boom is far from a speculative mania. So I think that we're really far away from an actual bubble territory if we're just looking at the PE ratios of some of the most valuable companies in the world. I don't believe that Wall Street understands what's happening with AI to the full extent, but this is going to be a transformational technology even over the next decade. How AI is integrated into every part of our life, of our work, of medicine, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. Getting more quantum specific, there's a company called Entity in Japan that is focusing on light, so photonics modality. So Entity is advancing a light-based approach to quantum computing as a cleaner, more scalable alternative to today's energy-intensive architectures. Entity's strategy positions photonic quantum technologies as a pathway towards commercially viable quantum platforms that can scale without the heavy infrastructure requirements of current systems. Japan is advancing a room temperature quantum computing strategy built on light rather than electricity. So I'll just give my thoughts here. Photonics to me is a front runner as far as modalities goes. And the reason is because it can operate at room temperature. And we did have Richard Murray of Orca Computing on here, and he talked a little bit about Orca and what they're doing with their photonics quantum computing. I am extremely excited that Xanadu has announced that they're going to be listed on the US equity market as long as their merger goes through. I'm invested, and I really think that photonics has a great chance as a modality because of the room temperature. And we also know that scientists in China and Japan are confirming that this is a good route, a good modality to pursue quantum. And if that wasn't enough, we had another article today. In quantum signaling advanced, Stanford researchers demonstrate smaller, simpler, cheaper nanoscale optical device. Stanford researchers have demonstrated a nanoscale optical device that operates at room temperature to entangle photons and electrons, offering a potential pathway to low-cost, low-energy quantum communication. Basically combining two types of silicon nanostructures to generate twisted light that transfers spin to electrons, creating qubits without the need for cryogenic cooling. Very much we're getting this confirmation. And we also had Inflection CEO Matt Kinsella on, and one advantage of the neutral atoms is they're able to do the computing at room temperature, and you don't have to get down to the cryogenic temperatures. And there's just so much baggage that comes along with needing to cool down the qubit to the subspace temperatures. There's a lot of costs associated with that. So these optical devices and this ecosystem of this alternative form of computing that is using light is absolutely fascinating. And I personally bought 500 more shares today of CHAC, Xanadu, and I think I have that article pulled up. Yeah. So Xanadu has announced their SPAC deal for $3 billion, and they entered into a definitive merger with Crane Harbor Acquisition Corp to become the first publicly traded pure play photonic quantum computing company listed on NASDAQ and the Toronto Stock Exchange. The deal values Xanadu at pre-money equity value of $3 billion. Now, I'm going to make a video soon, hopefully, on Xanadu and QUBT. The reason that I'm so bullish on Xanadu specifically is because we have Japan and China photonic research putting money into photonics. We just saw that article from Stanford on their research showing these optical devices. We've talked to Richard Murray. We know that room temperature, whether it's photonics or not photonics, that does matter in scalability, and it will matter commercially for integrating into data centers and that type of thing. So I decided, just based on the stock chart and the price currently for Xanadu, I just wanted more bonus shares because I saw the confirmation. We're seeing science and investment happening in real time. Finally, D-Wave announced the formation of the US government business unit. So D-Wave basically is working with several members of the US Department of War, including the Undersecretary of War for Research and Engineering, who added quantum technologies as a critical technology of focus. We also know that D-Wave has their system installed and operational at Davidson. So we're seeing D-Wave get closer and closer to military and DoD, and there's some reliable and recurring revenue that can come from a customer in the DoD. And we've already seen it in that inflection interview. So definitely go check that out. As Matt Kinsella was mentioning, that's one of their biggest customers. 50% or more of their revenue is DoD. So very big for D-Wave, and D-Wave had a big day. So why don't we start with D-Wave as we talk about, we move into the stocks portion of this video. So D-Wave has really been in essentially a head and shoulders situation. So we had a $47 print almost, and we moved down 60% to $18. And recently on the 4-hour candles, we're starting to see maybe a little bit of a bounce off the rising support. So when I say rising support, I'm going back and I'm looking at a longer trend. So this blue line, this imaginary blue line here, is kind of showing these lows, and this is kind of ignoring a little bit this $18, and we're just kind of looking at more of the averages. But we're seeing basically a bounce off of this rising support, and maybe if D-Wave is able to kind of fill this gap here, we could be in a situation where D-Wave could be looking at some sort of recovery, or maybe some sort of stabilization in this channel here, or maybe here. We're just kind of, it's all going to depend on sentiment. And we saw a lot of high beta stocks get a bid today, catch a bid, and they've been beaten down. As you can see, a lot of stocks like this have gone down a lot since their all-time highs. But important to point out, as we say, it's gone down a lot. Well, they moved in an insane way. Remember, the stock was in January a $3 stock. So to where it is today, it's still a 500% ROI in 1 year. And there was also a price upgrade today on D-Wave to $40. There was new coverage on D-Wave. So D-Wave still looks like it's in a decent spot. I mean, it's sold off a lot, it's cooled off, but can we see it's just even hold this $25, maybe $30 position until its next catalyst or partnership or whatever is going to happen with D-Wave. So looking pretty good there. IonQ, all these quantum stocks are going to have a similar chart, but I think IonQ specifically, we have something really interesting developing in our price history for IonQ, and I'm going to point this out here. So basically, this $48, $50 number, this is kind of this channel that IonQ had, where the bulls and the bears are in a massive tug of war. And the bulls took over here, okay, after Analyst Day, and pushed this stock and push all the way up to 85. And then this stock came down into the 30s again. So we are just absolutely getting crazy whiplash on these stocks. If we look at a longer trend, let's just do a little bit. We already have our rising support. I'm ignoring kind of this. I would call this like a bear fake, or like just like a little bit of a pump fake down. If we look at the rising support, it still looks like that's intact. I'm going to take away the lines and just show you again how it's so interesting that this channel, where there's so many investors that held the stock for all the way through the summer into the fall, we're in that channel again, and we're potentially in a situation where IonQ could break out. I think that since this point, since back here, there's been a lot of development in IonQ, but they're going to have to execute. That's going to be the big thing. Now, will IonQ keep getting rejected off 50? In a bearish case, I could see it move down. The market would have to be pretty sour, and high beta stocks would have to sell off again for us to see the 30s again. I think in a bullish case, we could see IonQ climb into the 50s, maybe breach 60, although up here we have less and less price history. So if we could see in a perfect world, or I would love to just see IonQ graduate from this sort of pocket that it's been in. I'm going to circle it again because it's just very interesting how that price history is developing. if it can graduate from that $40 to $50 stock to that $50 to $60 stock, that would be amazing. Maybe it could start using it as support. And that's what we could maybe predict going forward. Okay, Rigetti. So Rigetti's really interesting to me because Rigetti has also had this really big, nasty sell-off from the top here, all the way down 63%. But something's happening here that I don't think the bears really want to acknowledge. What's happening is now through all of or most of November, so basically from about here to present, Rigetti's been holding at about this $25 level. More or less, it's gone up and down, but $25. And if we go back and we look at Rigetti just earlier this year when it was a $5 stock to where it closed today, it's still up 300%. Of course, it was up 800% and it was ridiculous. Got ahead of itself a little bit, but there is always the idea in the back of your mind, okay, well, is the market really informed about all of these stocks and all of these modalities? It's a lot to keep track of. And one thing that we know is coming for Rigetti is their 100 qubit chip this month in 2025. So what's going to happen when that comes? And my prediction is that investors in the market's going to love it. And I think that it's very possible that Rigetti could maybe come up here and reclaim that 40 that it was holding for a while. It took a while for the bears to bring Rigetti below 40. But if they give us that 100 qubit chip and they tell us what's next, maybe it's 200, who knows? I don't even know what's coming after the 100. But if they can hit their technical milestone this month, I think the market will be excited about it, especially because we're in December and potentially in a bull rally. I say potentially because I am not sure. I have major trust issues with this market. Okay, so $8.70 on CLSQ all the way down to $3.25. Kind of a little bearish pump fake here. We're already back up to 469. And if we look at the longer trend on the 4-hour candles, we are building some upwards price movement, and we've seen 11 last year. We saw 9 this year, but the lows are getting higher, and that's important. So keep that in mind. CLSQ on a longer time frame is still looking very bullish. Veritone. So Veritone, we've talked to the CEO on this channel a couple of times, and they had, of course, their big data center news that gapped the stock up to 6, 7, 8, 950. And then there was sell-off because there was some dilution. They used that dilution to pay off debt. So now this stock is kind of in an interesting situation where it wants to breach and get out of these March 2024 where it's been stuck. It wants to get into more of this zone, maybe the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Veritone, if they can continue their work with data centers and they can continue their good work in AI, maybe they have a chance at continuing their trend. Quantum Emotion, we've talked to the CEO on this channel. It's pretty crazy just this year how many CEOs we've got the opportunity to talk to and learn from. Quantum Emotion, the one thing that stuck out to me in that interview is Francis said, we're using real quantum. So you can say you're quantum safe, you can say this or that, but we're actually using electron tunneling. We're actually using real quantum. And the stock has absolutely had a year for the books. So from let's say before their breakout to present day, the stock is up 2,200%. And they have a CEO who has an MBA and a PhD, a scientist and a business person. It's a great 1-2 punch. And the chart looks very bullish to me. The most recent high was $3.68. And there's been a lot of nice recovery on the 4-hour candles. Taking a look at CHAC, and this is the stock that I bought 500 shares of today. Okay. So Xanadu got unlucky. Let's just put it that way. They launched into a market that was very sour on high beta, very sour on quantum. And essentially, the stock did its best to hold above 1250 for maybe half a month. And then it got dumped, and then it got dumped. And we're literally at pre-Xanadu news prices. Okay. So this was an acquisition core, right? And the acquisition announcement was here, and the gap up that pushed this to 1320. Okay, what did we start this video? We talked about photonics, right? Photonics, room temperature, photonics, QUBT, Xanadu. There's some certain players that we can invest in. And of course, this is a SPAC merger. Of course, that there's extra risk that the SPAC goes through. But I decided to add exposure to this position because I think it's ridiculous that the news isn't even priced in for Xanadu. Xanadu didn't have its CCCX inflection, right? They had the announcement, and there was this gap up, and then it was just bullishness for weeks, and it went all the way up to 28. Xanadu never has even had its moment in the sun yet. So for me, I just loaded up a bunch of bonus shares today on Xanadu, and hopefully it all goes well. Okay, we talked with Matt Kinsella as well of inflection for CCCX, and the chart here is kind of, this was the peak quantum euphoria recently in 2025, and CCCX was extremely volatile. It was dumped really quickly down to 14. Then it rallied back to 24. Then it came down to 19. And it's just formed a base of support here under $15, $14.69. It had a decent day today. I think in the bigger picture, anything under $15, anything in the 13s is like, I've been backing up the truck and just loading up, especially with their commercialization and their focus on turning quantum sensing and quantum computing into real value in real dollars. I think some of the other companies, quantum companies, struggle with that a little bit. And inflection, that's basically something that is core to their thesis. All right, so taking a look at Poet. So Poet had some, this is kind of a sympathy run, but another, like a big company bought one of these little AI companies, and then they're thinking, okay, well, Poet might be next. And I know that's a gross oversimplification. We're running out of time, but it had a 28% day. Looking at the 4-hour candles, it has been in an uptrend since spring of 2024. And keep Poet on your radar. If we have a market that is very bullish, like we saw today, perhaps we'll see more. And then finally, Archer Aviation. So Archer, by some stroke of luck, somehow kept its uptrend, but not by a lot. So we're going to draw a new line here. And we had some interesting conversation. Argo actually is one of our Discord members, and he talked about, you know, maybe Archer doesn't get the certifications they need, and it would be a PR nightmare. And there's definitely risk to this trade. And you can see that this has totally been a 100% hype and psychological trade as the stock popped after the air show, popped after Jimmy Fallon. And as a long-term shareholder, I think it's very funny to see Archer trading at $6, $7, $8, because I think that in 2028, the stock is going to be worth much more than that, just based on what we've seen with the psychology and the excitement of eVTOL. All right, everyone. So that is all we got. We covered a bunch of stocks, a bunch of news. I'm super interested to hear what stocks you're most bullish on. And if you think, do you trust this market? Do you trust the green that we saw today? Do you think there's a turnaround happening? If I had to bet, because of the seasonality of December and because of all of the sell-off we've already seen, we are poised for a nice December. So I am a little bit more bullish than I was a couple of days ago. What do you guys think? What's your pulse on the market? Do you think this is a bull trap? Let me know, and we'll see you in the next one. I hope you really enjoyed that content. It's my goal to provide quality content as much as possible and with as little interruption as possible. If you would like to support my efforts and the channel, I offer 3 different membership options. It's super easy to sign up and it starts at just $4.99 a month. And you just click the subscribe button and you can learn more.